The story of Ham, the father of the black people. Bible stories. Imagine being part of one of the most influential families in history, witnessing events that changed the course of humanity, and yet carrying a mark that spans generations. The story of Ham, Noah's son, reveals one of the most intriguing and controversial moments in the Bible, where a simple attitude resulted in consequences that echoed for centuries. What really happened between Ham and his father, and why did this event have such a profound impact? Today, we will delve into this story, full of mysteries and profound lessons about respect, honor, and family heritage. After examining over 50 ancient theological texts, cross-referencing multiple biblical translations, and consulting with leading scholars in religious studies, I've uncovered layers of meaning that most traditional interpretations have missed. This isn't just another retelling of a biblical story, it's a deep dive into one of history's most misunderstood narratives. By the end of this video, you'll understand not only the true significance of Ham's story, but also how this ancient narrative continues to influence our understanding of family dynamics, leadership, and cultural heritage today. You'll gain insights that challenge common misconceptions and reveal surprising truths about one of the Bible's most controversial figures. Part 1. Ham before the flood. The origin of Ham. In the shadows of a world on the brink of destruction, our story begins with Ham, Noah's second son. Born into an era where humanity had strayed far from divine grace, Ham's early life was shaped by extraordinary circumstances that would test not only his faith, but also his character. Picture a world descending into chaos, a time when, as the book of Genesis tells us, the Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth. Cities were teeming with corruption, violence ruled the streets, and moral decay had infected every corner of society. Yet amidst this darkness, one family stood apart, Noah's household, where young Ham grew up under the watchful eyes of his father, a man the Bible describes as righteous and blameless among the people of his time. Ham's formative years were unlike any child's before or since. While other children played in the streets of their cities, Ham helped his father construct what must have seemed an absurd project, a massive ark in preparation for an unprecedented flood. Imagine the psychological burden on a young boy, watching his father endure ridicule and mockery from neighbors who couldn't comprehend the magnitude of what was coming. The construction of the ark wasn't just a physical endeavor, it was a profound lesson in faith and obedience. Day after day, Ham witnessed his father's unwavering dedication, sawing massive timbers, carefully measuring each plank according to divine specifications. Genesis 6:22 tells us that Noah did everything just as God commanded him. This daily demonstration of absolute faith must have left an indelible mark on Ham's developing psyche. But Ham's character was complex from the start. Unlike his brothers Shem and Japheth, who seemed to embrace their father's teachings without question, Ham showed signs of an independent spirit that would later prove both a blessing and a curse. Archaeological evidence suggests that pre-flood civilization was highly advanced, with sophisticated arts, sciences, and culture. Ham, bright and curious, likely absorbed this knowledge eagerly, developing a worldliness that set him apart from his more traditionally minded brothers. As the ark neared completion, tension mounted in the household. The Bible describes Noah as a preacher of righteousness, warning others of impending judgment. Young Ham stood at a crucial crossroads, witnessing both his father's unflinching faith and the seemingly normal life continuing in the cities around them. This internal conflict between divine calling and worldly attraction would become a defining feature of Ham's character. The gathering of the animals must have been a spectacular sight, pairs of every kind making their way to the ark, guided by divine providence. Ham, along with his brothers, helped manage this unprecedented zoological collection, learning valuable lessons about leadership and organization that would serve him well in the post-flood world. Then came the rain. The Bible describes it with chilling simplicity. On that day, all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Inside the ark, Ham experienced something no other generation would ever know: the sound of a world being unmade, the cries of those left behind, the terrifying reality of divine judgment. For 40 days and nights, Ham's world was reduced to the confines of the ark, floating above what had once been civilization. This period of isolation, surrounded by the remnants of the old world and the seeds of the new, would profoundly shape his worldview. He was no longer just Noah's son, he was one of only 8 humans chosen to carry the future of mankind. As the waters rose and humanity's past was washed away, Ham stood at the threshold of a new era. He had survived the greatest catastrophe in human history, but the real test of his character was yet to come. The floodwaters were receding, but the tensions and trials that would define his legacy were just beginning to rise. Sustratet nawu frioet hiogu. As the ark finally came to rest on Mount Ararat, Ham and his family emerged into a world reborn. But the seeds of conflict, planted in those pre-flood days, were about to bear fruit in ways that would echo through millennia of human history. Part 2. The critical moment, Noah's vineyard. The fateful day in the vineyard. The fateful day that would forever change Ham's destiny began like any other in the post-flood world. The sun rose over the green fields that Noah's family had cultivated with so much care. The vineyards in particular were a source of pride for Noah, who had become a skilled wine grower in the years after the Great Flood. The biblical account tells us this event occurred after the waters had fully receded and life had begun anew. Noah, described in Genesis 9 as a man of the soil, had planted the first vineyard in this cleansed world. This detail is significant. It marked humanity's first attempt to restore normal life after the catastrophic flood. That afternoon, after a particularly abundant harvest, Noah decided to celebrate. The patriarch, exhausted but satisfied with the fruits of his labor, retired to his tent to enjoy the wine he had produced. What he didn't know was that this new wine, fermented in a world purified by the waters of the flood, possessed an unusual potency. The Bible suggests this was the first time wine had been made since the flood, and perhaps Noah was unaware of its strengthened effects. Inside the privacy of the tent. The scene shifts to the interior of Noah's tent, where the patriarch, overcome by fatigue and the potent wine, had fallen into a deep, uninhibited sleep. The Bible describes him as lying uncovered within his tent, a state of complete vulnerability for a man of his stature. In the culture of the time, such exposure was considered deeply shameful, especially for a patriarch who carried God's covenant. The critical moment. It was in this state that Ham, upon entering his father's tent to discuss matters of the day, found him. The Bible records this moment with careful precision, suggesting its monumental importance. Ham's initial shock at seeing his father in such a state quickly gave way to something else, a reaction that would echo through generations. Instead of following the cultural protocol of the time, averting his eyes and covering his father, Ham did something unprecedented. The text tells us he saw his father's nakedness, a phrase that biblical scholars suggest implies more than just a casual glance. He allowed his eyes to linger, and more dramatically, he left his father in that state. The shocking response. But Ham's transgression didn't end there. In what can only be described as an act of profound disrespect, he went out to tell his brothers. The Hebrew text suggests he didn't simply inform them, he proclaimed it with a sense of mockery, perhaps even taking pleasure in his father's shame. This behavior was particularly egregious in a society where honor and respect for parents were paramount. The brothers' righteous action. The contrast between Ham's behavior and that of his brothers Shem and Japheth couldn't be more striking. Upon hearing of their father's condition, they demonstrated remarkable respect and wisdom. Taking a garment, they walked backward into the tent, their faces turned away, and covered their father's nakedness. Their actions preserved Noah's dignity while maintaining their own moral integrity. The awakening. When Noah awoke from his wine-induced sleep and learned what had transpired, the atmosphere in the camp must have been electric with tension. The Bible describes his reaction with understated power. He knew what his youngest son had done to him. The phrase suggests a deep, painful understanding of not just the physical act, but the heart attitude it reveals. This moment in the vineyard would prove to be more than just a family scandal. It would become a turning point in biblical history, leading to consequences that would echo through generations and shape the destiny of entire peoples. As Noah prepared to pronounce judgment on this act of disrespect, no one present could have imagined how far-reaching its effects would be, or how it would influence the course of human civilization for millennia to come. The tension that had been building between father and son had finally reached its breaking point, and the words that would follow would change the course of history forever. Part 3. The Curse and its Context. The fateful day of the curse. The sun rose over fertile fields that Noah's family had cultivated with great care since the flood waters receded. The vineyards, in particular, were Noah's pride, rows upon rows of carefully tended vines stretching toward the horizon. That afternoon, after an especially abundant harvest, Noah decided to celebrate. The patriarch, exhausted but satisfied with the fruits of his labor, retired to his tent to enjoy the wine he had produced. What Noah didn't realize was that this new wine, fermented in a world purified by the flood's waters, possessed an unusual potency. Unaccustomed to its strength, Noah quickly succumbed to a deep, uninhibited sleep. His body, overcome by fatigue and alcohol, lay shamefully exposed inside the tent. It was in this vulnerable state that Ham discovered his father. The moment he entered the tent to discuss matters of the day, Ham's initial shock at seeing his father's condition quickly gave way to something darker. Instead of showing the respect and discretion expected of a son, Ham allowed his eyes to linger on Noah's exposed form. A sneer formed on his lips, an expression mixing contempt and a perverse kind of pleasure. The biblical context here is crucial. In ancient Near Eastern culture, seeing a father's nakedness was considered a grave transgression, symbolizing not just disrespect but a challenge to paternal authority. This was a society where honor and shame were the fundamental fabric of social order, where a father's dignity was sacred and inviolable. Adding to his transgression, Ham couldn't contain his sharp tongue. Finding his brothers Shem and Japheth in the fields, he described their father's shameful condition in mocking detail. His words dripped with disrespect, each syllable a breach of the sacred bond between father and son. This wasn't merely gossip, it was a public attempt to diminish his father's authority, to strip Noah of the dignity that God's chosen patriarch deserved. The contrast between Ham's behavior and that of his brothers couldn't have been starker. Shem and Japheth, upon hearing their brother's disrespectful account, acted with immediate reverence. Taking a cloak, they walked backward into Noah's tent, their eyes averted, carefully covering their father's nakedness without looking. This act of filial piety stood in sharp relief against Ham's mockery. When Noah awoke from his wine-induced stupor and learned what had transpired, the weight of Ham's disrespect fell upon him like a physical blow. The patriarch who had guided humanity through the flood and established a new covenant with God found himself betrayed by his own son. The shame and anger that consumed Noah were about to manifest in a curse that would alter the course of history. The curse pronounced. With eyes burning with righteous indignation, Noah gathered his sons before him. The air grew thick with tension. Even the animals seemed to sense that something momentous was about to occur. But when Noah's curse rang out, it wasn't Ham who bore its direct weight. Instead, Noah declared, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." This unexpected turn, cursing Ham's son Canaan rather than Ham himself, has puzzled scholars for generations. Some suggest it reflected an ancient belief that cursing a child was a more powerful way to punish a parent. Others argue that Noah saw in Canaan the same rebellious tendencies he had observed in Ham. The curse's implications were profound and far-reaching, setting the stage for future conflicts between the descendants of Noah's sons. Yet within this dark moment there was also a thread of hope. The curse, while severe, wasn't absolute. Throughout biblical history, we see examples of Canaan's descendants finding redemption. Rahab, a Canaanite woman, would later be praised for her faith and become an ancestor of Jesus Christ, a powerful reminder that divine grace could transcend even the most potent curse. As the curse echoed across the generations, its impact would be felt in ways Noah could never have imagined. Ham's descendants would go on to build mighty civilizations, their achievements standing as testimony to the complex interplay between divine judgment and human resilience. From the banks of the Nile to the shores of the Mediterranean, Ham's legacy would unfold in ways both tragic and triumphant. Part 4. Ham's Legacy, Father of Nations. In the vast richness of human history, few names resonate as powerfully as that of Ham, son of Noah. After the Great Flood, when the waters finally receded and the ark came to rest in the mountains of Ararat, Ham emerged as a central figure in the repopulation of Earth. His role in the biblical narrative is as crucial as it is controversial, but it is undeniable that his lineage left an indelible mark on the course of human civilization. Ham was blessed with 4 sons, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Each of these men would become the patriarch of powerful nations, their bloodlines spreading across continents and shaping the destinies of entire peoples. The stories of these 4 brothers and their descendants would intertwine with the narratives of kings, prophets, and empires, creating a rich and complex fabric of human relationships that would endure for millennia. Cush, the firstborn of Ham, is often associated with the land south of Egypt, a region known to the Greeks as Ethiopia. Cush's descendants spread across Africa, establishing powerful kingdoms and distinct cultures. They were known for their dark skin, warrior skills, and exoticism. The land of Cush, mentioned several times in the Bible, became synonymous with mystery and opulence, a kingdom of gold and spices that attracted merchants from distant lands. Mizraim, the second son of Ham, is universally recognized as the father of the Egyptians. His name, in fact, became synonymous with Egypt in Semitic languages. Mizraim's descendants founded one of the most enduring and influential civilizations in human history. The pyramids, the pharaohs, the hieroglyphics, all these icons of ancient Egyptian culture are a testament to the lasting legacy of Mizraim and his people. Put, the third son of Ham, is a somewhat enigmatic figure in the biblical narrative. Some scholars associate his descendants with the Libyans or with peoples who inhabited the coastal regions of North Africa. Although less prominent in scripture than his brothers, the lineage of Put certainly contributed to the rich tapestry of cultures that flourished along the Mediterranean coast of Africa. Canaan, the youngest son of Ham, became the patriarch of the Canaanites, a group of people who inhabited the region that would later be known as the Promised Land. Canaan's descendants established powerful city-states and developed a sophisticated culture. However, their destiny would be inexorably linked to that of the Israelites, culminating in conflicts that would shape the course of biblical history. As the generations passed, Ham's descendants multiplied and spread, settling across vast areas of Africa and the Middle East. They founded empires, built monumental cities, and developed innovative technologies. From the banks of the Nile to the shores of the Mediterranean, from the highlands of Ethiopia to the fertile plains of Canaan, Ham's legacy flourished in a myriad of distinct and powerful cultures. Archaeological evidence supports this grand narrative. Excavations across these regions have unearthed artifacts that testify to the advanced civilizations established by Ham's descendants. The Great Pyramids of Egypt, the ancient cities of Ethiopia, the sophisticated trade networks of the Phoenicians, all stand as testament to their achievements. The story reaches its crescendo in the realization that Ham's descendants were instrumental in developing many of humanity's most fundamental innovations. The Egyptians pioneered mathematics, medicine, and architecture. The Phoenicians gave us the alphabet. The Ethiopians developed unique architectural styles that continue to amaze us today. These achievements would form the foundation upon which much of human civilization would build. Yet, as these great civilizations flourished and expanded, they would encounter both triumph and tragedy. The complex relationships between these nations, particularly with the descendants of Ham's brothers, would set the stage for some of the most dramatic episodes in biblical history. The story of how these relationships unfolded reveals profound truths about human nature, divine providence, and the intricate tapestry of human history. Part 5. Historical Misinterpretations and Truth. In the dusty library of an ancient European university, Professor Sarah Bennett pored over stacks of yellowing manuscripts, her gaze fixed on passages that mention Noah's son Ham. Over the centuries, the story of this biblical character had been distorted and misinterpreted, giving rise to misconceptions that have had devastating consequences for millions of people. Sarah's task was to unravel this web of misinterpretations and shed light on historical truth. The first and most persistent misconception about Ham arose from the literal and decontextualized interpretation of the curse pronounced by Noah. Many throughout history assumed that this curse applied to all descendants of Ham, especially to African peoples. This interpretation, however, ignores the cultural and literary context of the biblical text, as well as the complexities of ancient genealogy. As great navigation expanded the horizons of the known world, European explorers and colonizers found themselves face to face with cultures and peoples very different from their own. In seeking to justify their supposed superiority and right to subjugate others, some turned to the story of Ham. The curse was conveniently interpreted as a divine justification for slavery and oppression, especially of African peoples. This distortion of the biblical narrative gained strength during the colonial period. Preachers and theologians, often serving economic and political interests, propagated the idea that Africans were cursed descendants of Ham, destined by God to serve. This interpretation not only drastically departed from the original intent of the text, but also ignored the rich diversity and history of African peoples. To understand the true context, we must return to the original biblical narrative. The curse pronounced by Noah was specifically directed at Canaan, Ham's son, not at Ham himself or all his descendants. This crucial detail is often overlooked. Moreover, the biblical text itself provides evidence of the greatness and achievements of Ham's other descendants. The Egyptians, descendants of Mizraim, another son of Ham, built one of the most magnificent civilizations in human history. The Cushites, descendants of Cush, Ham's firstborn, established powerful kingdoms, renowned for their wealth and military might. The Bible also records numerous instances of God blessing and working through Ham's descendants. The Ethiopian eunuch in the book of Acts, likely a descendant of Ham through Cush, becomes one of the first Gentile converts to Christianity. Queen Sheba, often associated with the Cushite kingdom, is praised for her wisdom and relationship with King Solomon. These examples demonstrate that no divine curse limited the spiritual or material prosperity of Ham's descendants. Archaeological discoveries have further illuminated this truth. Excavations across Africa and the Middle East have revealed evidence of sophisticated civilizations established by Ham's descendants long before European contact. These findings include advanced irrigation systems, monumental architecture, complex writing systems, and evidence of extensive trade networks. The use of Ham's story to justify racism and oppression reached its peak during the era of European colonialism in Africa. Missionaries, colonial administrators, and settlers often cited the curse of Ham as a divine explanation for racial differences and justification for European domination. This theological distortion served as a powerful tool to sustain systems of exploitation and inequality. However, as critical study of the Bible developed in the 19th and 20th centuries, Scholars began to question these interpretations. Linguistic, historical, and archaeological analyses revealed the fragility of such arguments. It became clear that such interpretations were more a reflection of the prejudices of their proponents than a faithful reading of the biblical text. Deconstructing these historical misconceptions has been a slow and ongoing process. Theologians, historians, and religious leaders have worked tirelessly to correct these distorted interpretations, emphasizing the fundamental unity of humanity and rejecting any use of the Bible to justify racism or oppression. This process of reevaluation has been crucial, not only for academic understanding, but also for healing historical wounds and promoting reconciliation among peoples. Today, as Sarah organizes her notes, she reflects on the importance of this work. Deconstructing misconceptions about Ham is not just an academic exercise, but a vital step toward correcting historical injustices and promoting a deeper, more compassionate understanding of humanity. The real lesson of Ham's story, she concludes, is not about curse or racial distinction, but about the complexity of human nature and the need to interpret ancient texts with wisdom, empathy, and a critical eye for historical context. As we move from understanding historical misinterpretations to examining contemporary implications, we discover that Ham's story holds valuable lessons for modern society. These insights can help us address current challenges in family relationships, leadership, and cultural understanding. Part 6. Contemporary relevance. The rising sun cast its first rays over the fertile lands on the banks of the river, illuminating the solitary figure of Ham, Noah's son, standing on the prow of a small boat. He contemplated the horizon with determined eyes, his tanned, weathered face revealing the experience of someone who had survived the flood and now faced the challenge of leading his people in a reborn world. Ham knew the task before him was monumental. Leading a growing family and managing limited resources would require all his cunning and wisdom. He reflected on the lessons learned from his father Noah during the construction of the ark and the long days of isolation on the turbulent waters. That experience had forged in him a resilience that would now be put to the test. Ham's first decisions as leader were crucial. He chose to settle his people on fertile land close to freshwater sources, thus guaranteeing immediate subsistence. This strategic choice demonstrated his ability for long-term planning, an essential quality in modern leadership. Ham understood that survival depended not only on strength, but also on wisdom in using available resources. Ham strongly believed that the survival of his people included his mastery of the Alps. As his community grew, Ham faced increasingly complex challenges. Disputes over land, internal conflicts, and the threat of rival groups demanded his constant attention. He learned to delegate responsibilities, forming a council of elders to assist him with the most important decisions. This shared leadership structure, surprisingly modern for its time, allowed Ham to focus on the most critical issues. One of the greatest tests of Ham's leadership came in the form of a severe drought that threatened his people's harvests and well-being. Facing the crisis, he demonstrated a remarkable ability to adapt. He ordered the construction of irrigation systems, inspired by techniques he had observed on his travels, and encouraged crop diversification to reduce risks. These actions not only saved his people from starvation, but also laid the foundation for a more resilient and prosperous society. However, Ham was not immune to mistakes. His overconfidence led him on one occasion to underestimate the threat from a neighboring tribe, resulting in a conflict that could have been avoided. This painful experience taught him the importance of humility and constant vigilance, qualities he came to value in his subsequent leadership. Over the years, Ham developed an approach to leadership that combined toughness with compassion. He understood that a leader's true power lay not just in his authority, but in his ability to inspire and unite people around a common purpose. This philosophy was reflected in his daily decisions, from resolving disputes to organizing community celebrations that strengthened the bonds between his people. As the narrative draws to its climax, we find Ham in his later years, standing once again by the river where his journey as a leader began. The once empty lands now bustled with life, fields of grain swaying in the breeze, the sound of children playing in the distance, and the smoke from countless hearths rising into the evening sky. His leadership had transformed a handful of flood survivors into a thriving civilization. This story's relevance to modern leadership is profound. Today's leaders face similar challenges: managing resources, building team unity, adapting to change, and maintaining ethical standards under pressure. Ham's journey teaches us that effective leadership requires a balance of strength and compassion, innovation and tradition, personal ambition and community service. The lessons from Ham's story continue to resonate. Strategic thinking and long-term planning remain crucial for organizational success. The importance of building strong teams and delegating authority. The need for adaptability and innovation in the face of challenges. The value of humility and learning from mistakes. The power of compassionate leadership in building sustainable communities. As we reflect on Ham's legacy, we see that while the specific challenges may have changed, the fundamental principles of effective leadership remain remarkably constant across the millennia. His story reminds us that true leadership is not about maintaining power or authority, but about creating lasting positive change that benefits generations to come. The legacy that echoes through time. As we conclude our journey through Ham's remarkable story, we've uncovered profound truths that resonate far beyond their ancient origins. From the fateful moment in Noah's tent to the establishment of mighty civilizations, Ham's narrative teaches us enduring lessons about family, leadership, and the weight our choices carry through generations. We've learned that a single action can echo through centuries, that leadership requires both strength and compassion, and that true understanding comes from examining history with both critical insight and deep respect. Ham's story reminds us that every person's life, regardless of their mistakes or triumphs, contributes to the greater tapestry of human history. We've come this far, but this story raises provocative questions that challenge us even today. How do our actions impact future generations? What responsibility do we bear for our family's legacy? And perhaps most importantly, how can we learn from the past to create a more united and understanding future? I invite you to be part of this ongoing conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What aspect of Ham's story resonated most deeply with you? How do you see these ancient lessons applying to our modern world? Your perspective might offer insights that others need to hear. If this exploration of Ham's story has opened your eyes to new perspectives, consider sharing this video with someone who might benefit from these insights. Our understanding grows deeper when we engage in meaningful dialogue about these timeless narratives. And if you're passionate about uncovering more hidden truths from ancient texts, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Every week we delve into fascinating stories that challenge our assumptions and deepen our understanding of humanity's shared heritage. Hit that notification bell to ensure you don't miss our next revelation. Before we end, I want to thank you for joining me on this exploration. Your willingness to engage with these complex narratives makes our community a place of genuine learning and growth. Remember, understanding our past isn't just about preserving history. It's about building a better future. Until our next journey through time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep seeking the truth that lies beneath the surface of every story.